Hi, I'm immigration lawyer John Khosravi. Thank you for tuning in and watching this special video I'm doing about consular processing, the process for getting an immigrant visa and eventually a green card through the U.S. embassy system. Now, this is for people who are getting their green card based on family, relationships. This is based on employment. It could even be people who are winning the green card lottery, the diversity visa. It's for the most part the same process you have to go through. Each of them have nuanced differences. We're not going to go to the nuance of each one, but we're going to talk about the major things you have to do for each and discuss how those work out and how the process happens, so you have a good understanding of the process called consular processing. So stick around, and I'm sure you'll learn a lot today. Thanks again for viewing this. I'm immigration lawyer John Khosravi, headquartered in Los Angeles, California, but I help people from across the world come to the United States. The process we're going to talk about, consular processing, is a process that only requires you to upload documents to the Department of State. So my location, Los Angeles, doesn't make a difference for this process, and I help people from across the world. It could happen if you're in the United States, outside the United States. The paperwork, wherever you are, the petitioner, the U.S. company is, it doesn't matter because it's all done online. So what is consular processing? As I mentioned earlier, it's when you apply for a green card, you eventually have to do an embassy interview, and setting up that embassy interview to eventually get the green card is called consular processing. And there's a lot of different steps to it. It takes some time to do, and it varies depending on the country you're coming from, because there may be different steps, maybe different pieces of paperwork, or after the embassy interview, it may be additional delays or travel bans that affect your case. That's why it's important to note that this is general education only. You should consult with an immigration attorney in private about your case to see what's appropriate for your individual case. But let's get it started. What happens when a case like this begins? So first of all, for most consular processing cases, you get a notification from the National Visa Center to say, we got your documents, and we're going to contact you about starting the future, or let's start your work. If you take a step before that, if it's a family-based case, there's a form I-130 you submitted, and that was submitted for the foreign person to say they're a relative of a U.S. citizen or green card holder, and you're requesting a green card through that. Once that's approved and your place in line comes to where it should be, the National Visa Center notifies you so you can start working with them to uploading documents. The National Visa Center, for short, is called the NVC, the National Visa Center, NVC. And for employment-based cases, the employer started something and got an approved I-140. And for diversity visa lottery winners, they go through the Kentucky Center. There's a little bit nuanced difference, but eventually they start uploading documents too, unless the specific embassy wants you to directly bring those documents. So we're not going to talk too much about the diversity visa program because it's slightly different, but it has large parts that are the same. So you can still listen to this and learn about how to process the green card lottery for the most part. So National Visa Center contacts you and say, okay, we want you to begin submitting documents for consular processing. First and foremost, they give you a case number, and the first three letters of that case number are attuned to the U.S. Embassy where your interview will happen at. Usually it's the U.S. Embassy where the foreign person lives in or where they're residing in lawfully. So let's say if they're a French citizen but they're living and working in Canada temporarily, they could potentially go to Montreal to do their interview. But if they're in France, they could go to the embassy in Paris. Keep in mind that only the U.S. Embassy in any country handles green card cases. So in the example of Canada, the U.S. has several consulates across Canada: Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal is the embassy, and Ontario, I think there's another one as well. But you could only do your green card at one location. Sometimes there may be exceptions that allow two locations. Previously in Japan had two locations where you could do your green card interview. But for the most part, you choose one location. There's some minor countries, very few, that don't have U.S. embassies, only consulates. People from those countries may have to go to a neighboring country to do their interview. And so we'll talk about that briefly as well when we discuss the next steps. But you get that case number, and with that case number, you could access a website called CEAC, C-E-A-C. There'll be a link in the email that you go to. And when you want to log into that website, first you put your case number, then you go to the next page, and then it has the invoice ID number. You include that, you put in the code that they put in there, and then you go through it, and the next page is where your dashboard is for you to begin working on documents. And there's three major sections in that dashboard on the National Visa Center CEAC website. One is a place to upload documents for financial documents, the affidavit of support, and related documents. Secondly, it's a form DS-260. It's an intense form about the applicant's, the foreign national's background. And once the DS-60 is completed and submitted, it opens up the option to submit your civil documents. These are, birth certificates, marriage certificates, and the like. So it's important that you always have all those prepared beforehand and then upload. Note that that website has limitations on the file size. Right now it's 2 megabytes. It might increase, and the paperwork always have to be up to down, no sideways documents. They get pretty annoying sometimes about how strict they want to be about that, and be mindful that right now, at least as of this recording, when they communicate with you through that website and send you a message, when you click to open their message, many times the message won't even open up, and you may need to contact the National Visa Center through their website contact page for them to tell you in an email what that is. So there's delays baked in the cake there because of the communication system as of now doesn't work properly. So let's go through each of these documents. So first of all, the financial documents, it's about the affidavit of support to show that a U.S. person, if it's a family member, could support you financially. They complete Form I-864, maybe a joint sponsor is needed. For employment-based cases, you don't require an affidavit of support unless the company is of a relative or something like that. So only very minor exceptions that require you to do that, but mostly this video is for family-based cases as an example. So the affidavit of support, all those documents are needed. I'll do a separate video about the affidavit of support portion, but Form I-864, but that's right there. The Form DS-260 is an detailed application that requires all your information. Make sure to include it all. Don't keep anything out there. When they ask for 5 years worth of phone numbers, 5 years worth of emails, your social media history, give it all. You don't want it to come back later and say you didn't tell us something. If you use any nicknames, and I get this a lot where people get called a name, but they don't think it's an official name, so they don't put it on there. They want every single name, and that includes nicknames, so you should include that information as well. They also ask every address you've had since the age of 16, so that's really obnoxious because you got to go back and find all these old addresses, and if you're older, that's very hard. And they have a long list of security, immigration related questions that you have to read in detail to be prepared for the answers that you give there. Now, with regards to those immigration questions, one of them asks if you've received the vaccines needed for the process. Most people have not. So you would say no, and a box opens up for you to explain what the situation is. And you could say, I will be getting my vaccine before the immigrant visa interview happens, just to let them know that should be fine. And also, well, I guess once you submit that DS-260, keep a copy, download a copy of it for your own files, but also download and print the receipt for the DS-260 as something that you'll need to bring with you to the interview. So once that DS-260 is submitted, it opens up the option to upload civil documents. These are marriage documents, birth certificates, all that kind of stuff, name changes. One of the questions there asks for passport photos to upload. Now, you don't have to do that there. You could write on a white page saying, I will bring the passport photos with me to the interview, upload that scanned page or clear photo of it, and that's acceptable. But another part that's required here are police certificates for countries you've lived in, either more than 6 months or a year. Check out the National Visa Center's website on the civil documents for clear details on what kind of documents are needed. But be mindful of the police certificates. You want to jump on that. Sometimes some countries take a while to give these police clearances, or we call police certificates, to show you have no criminal history. So you want to get that beforehand. If there is any arrest or criminal history, you definitely want to have the arrest records and court records way ahead of time and really analyze that with an immigration attorney before you even start the process. But those are necessary to be uploaded as well, so the government has that. Once you get all these documents together and submit it to the National Visa Center, there's a submit button. You want to submit the affidavit of support stuff and the civil documents at the same time. Don't just submit half of them because they're separate sections, and then another half later they'll come back and say submit all at once. Unfortunately, the computer system is not that good for them to adjust it like that, but you have to hold off and submit both at the same time. Eventually, National Visa Center officers, the agent there, is going to look at it. Once it's okayed, they'll say, okay, now the case is accepted, the documents is documentarily qualified. Please wait for us to contact you with an embassy appointment. Now, if there's anything missing or they have problems with the documents, they'll come back and say, please correct this. And once you correct it, submit it, they approve it and get you documentarily qualified. Then again, they'll say, you know, wait for the embassy to contact you. Now, how long will that take? You know, some places it'll take 1 or 2 months, some take 3 or 4 months. If you have a COVID-19 travel ban, it could be longer. If it's a COVID-19 shutdown, it could be longer. There's a lot of different things that could happen to mess around with this time, and a lot of it depends on what country you're from. So it's very hard to know what the time is, and this is one of the biggest questions I get asked is, how long is consular processing? After I submit that document, how long before you get the interview? And it's unknown. It could be a situation where the same person as you in the same country gets their interview after 2 months, another gets it after 6 months. There could be a lot of different reasons why that happens that we have no control over. So that is the way it is. Now, if it goes 6 months and there's no real reason for them to delay that long, you try contacting the National Visa Center or the embassy, ask what's going on. But make sure there's no obvious reason that it's problematic for that to happen. Now, I did mention earlier that some countries don't have embassies, and that becomes an issue of how to plan that out. This is a step where that happens because you at the beginning of the case, when you submit the I-130 or the I-140, you designated embassy you want to go to, but they inevitably choose for you what it is depending on what your nationality or background is or what country you're living in. And so some countries that don't have them, I think Montenegro is one of them, small. People have to go to a neighboring country. Iran does not have a U.S. embassy, so Iranians have to go to Armenia, Turkey, or the United Arab Emirates for their interview. Yemen had their embassy shut down, and they allow Yemenis to go to various different locations to do the interview. So that kind of stuff pops up. But eventually, you wait for the embassy to tell the National Visa Center what scheduling kind of system that they have, and the National Visa Center sends you an email saying what the when the time is for you to do the interview. Once you get that, there's two main things you have to do once you get the appointment notice from the National Visa Center. First of all, you need to schedule schedule an appointment with a doctor. It's not a civil surgeon. Civil surgeon is a doctor in the U.S. A panel physician is what they call for consular processing. And this information should be on the website for the U.S. Embassy, which you're going to go to. Or better yet, if you go to the Department of State's subsection website for the National Visa Center, there'll be a list of all the embassies. It may be hard to find it, but it has a list of every single embassy that does immigrant visas, which is the process you're asking for, the immigrant visa. And it has their breakdown of what kind of documents they want, what doctors are there. So you definitely want to check out that page. I'll probably have a link to it below that you can pick it and find the U.S. Embassy you're going to, because that page will list which doctors you can go to schedule this appointment for the checkup and the vaccines. You can only go to those doctors, so you definitely want to connect with them. It also lists what kind of documents that embassy likes and the nuances of processing a case at that particular embassy. Now, what I do as an immigration attorney is every time someone comes to me right at the beginning, like way ahead of time, I review this document to see the nuances that are currently required, so we prepare it from the beginning. So this should be one of the first things you do before you even do anything. Check out at the end what the embassy wants, so something doesn't happen where you go at the last second and you're preparing for the embassy interview and you realize there's a document you don't have. That's not appropriate. You don't want to wait till the last second to get that. So definitely check that out, because it'll have a list of the doctors, but also has the procedures for scheduling an appointment. Now, each embassy in the U.S., in America, in the world, each American embassy anywhere in the world has different requirements. So some of them you have to go and register your interview. There's a website called US Visa Info, and you register your interview with the embassy, and then you say where you want your documents to be sent to, because at the interview you give your passport and you make a request for it to be returned either at your house, at a postal location, or some other situation. And for some embassies you need to set it up, and that's the website that's there for the US Visa Info website. That PDF I talked about earlier that has a list of doctors also has that information about scheduling as well. Not every embassy has that, so every time you do an embassy case, you have to check to see what the procedures for that specific embassy are at the beginning, so you know what you're going to be dealing with. As I said again, everyone does it differently, and everyone has nuanced differences. So the US Visa Info, I don't believe they don't have a one for China. I just did a China immigrant visa case. But if you're doing it through like Iran, for example, they do have that, and you register. For example, Turkey, let's say, the US Embassy in Turkey is registered with US Visa Info for you to choose where your documents are going to be sent to. So be prepared for this kind of stuff. That's why it's kind of hard to do a very specific video about this or to give specific case advice, because each embassy is so different, and every couple of years when they change the ambassador at the embassy or who leadership of that embassy, all of a sudden some nuanced changes happen that make it hard to give a general video and general breakdown what's required, a specific breakdown what's required, because each one is so different. So it's very important to know that and study the embassy you're going to deal with beforehand so you're prepared for what's happening. So okay, you get the interview notice, you register if needed, you schedule a doctor's appointment hopefully a few days beforehand to do the medical checkup. When you do the medical checkup, note that this doctor isn't your doctor giving you private advice. They work essentially for the government, and they're there to take that information, so anything you do can and will be used against you. So be mindful of that. So you don't want to joke around about alcohol use and drug use when you're not an alcohol user in that sense, or drug user. You got to keep it serious, and this is a somber situation that you're dealing with. Once a doctor is done, historically they will give you a sealed envelope with the results that you would take to the appointment at the U.S. Embassy. But more and more they're doing this stuff digitally, so some doctors may digitally send it to the embassy, so don't give it to you per se. So be mindful of that situation. The other thing you have to do is just prepare all your civil documents. So we already uploaded copies of all the documents to that CEAC website at the National Visa Center stage. Now you need to bring originals of it so they could compare the original with a copy we sent them to confirm that document is not fake. So You have to have the list of all those documents you need to submit: birth certificates, marriage certificates, passports, divorce certificates, police certificates, military records, national ID cards, anything that's specific to your country, your background. You need to bring those originals along with passport photos, and note that the doctor at the medical checkup will require passport photos as well. Each doctor is different. You have to see what the requirements of their office is, but just keep in mind. So you have to have all this stuff together. It's a big package you take with you to the embassy, and then when you go there, you do your interview, and they check you out, and that's the differences pop up right here. Some will say, okay, you're approved, give us your passport a day or two, and we'll mail it back to you, or we'll leave with the postal location. Some will say we need more documents. They'll give you a sheet of paper listing what documents you need. Some will say we have all your documents, but we need to do additional reviews. We're going to put you in what's called administrative processing. And that could take a week, a month, a year, or more for them to complete the administrative processing process. And so you never know after the interview how long it's going to take. Now, most people get their visa approved within a few days or weeks, and it's not a problem, but there are countries and nationals of certain countries that will get stuck with administrative processing. If it ends up taking too long, what we do is we sometimes have to file a lawsuit against the government for these delays. It may or may not work, it may or may not lead to an approval, but at least you're not left there hanging to see what's happening. And that's why it's really hard when people ask me how long a case takes. I've seen cases that should take, from the National Visa Center stage, like 4 months, take 3 years before. And it's all over the place. It's rare, but it does happen. So it makes it hard for me to say this is the time it takes, because each case in each embassy is so different. All right, so let's say your case gets approved at the embassy. They give you a visa stamp. You are not a green card holder yet. That's just the immigrant visa stamp. Once you enter the United States and go through customs, then you become a green card holder, and the green card gets mailed to you. Some notes before that. So the travel bans that are happening, this is 2020 right now in this recording, affect a lot of different people. So some countries, they won't issue the visa or schedule the interview due to the travel ban. Also, some people who have an immigrant visa and they haven't entered the United States yet, if a travel ban gets hit, sometimes they'll say immigrant visa holders are affected. So that stamp in your passport is not a green card yet until you enter the US. If there is an immigrant visa travel ban that occurs, that could affect you and prevent you from entering the United States. So be very cautious of that. And right now, just a specific example, if you're going to come to the United States with the immigrant visa, there are travel bans across the world. So if you stop in a certain country that has a travel ban, that could prevent you from coming here. So for example, let's say you're from Armenia and you're going to come to the United States with your immigrant visa, and your plane has a stop in France. Because you have a stop in France, a country that's hit by the COVID-19 European travel ban, that could prevent you from being able to come to the United States and be a barrier. You don't want to do that, so you want to plan it out. And this is another reason why it's good to have an immigration attorney, that there's 1,000,001 of these little things that can become problematic, and we don't want you to get caught by that. So let's back it up a little bit. You get the immigrant visa. You may or may not have a packet that they give you as a sealed envelope with your medical. Because they're doing stuff digitally now, some embassies will just give you the immigrant visa and wire technologically or digitally the information to the airport you're entering to so they see it, or they'll give you a sealed envelope with the results for you to take with you. It's very important once you get the immigrant visa to pay the immigrant visa fee. This is an additional fee. Right now it's $220. It could increase. You want to pay this fee before coming to the United States, so it's in their system. You log on to USCIS website and there'll be a place for you to pay that. The instructions will be with the immigrant visa packet that you give. Another note, if you're a male, come to the United States with an immigrant visa between the age of 18 and 26, you have to register with the U.S. Selective Service. This is the military draft of the United States. Every green card holder, American, even people here without permission, need to register for it. If you don't, it's going to delay the amount of time you have to delay the process for you to get citizenship, and potentially some loans. For example, if you want to go to college, you get a loan, it could be problematic. So you definitely want to register with the Selective Service draft. The embassy is supposed to give you a piece of paper that explains and breaks down that you need to do this. Some people don't get it from them, or some people forget to do it. Don't make a mistake and not do that if you're a male between the age of 18 and 26. You want to prevent that kind of problem from popping up. So let's go back about it. There's a lot of different things like this, and I want to make sure I get as many of them as I can here. But okay, got the immigrant visa, you fly into the United States, you go through customs, you register with the Selective Service draft. You should be getting the green card in the mail, a few weeks later. Sometimes it doesn't come, sometimes it takes many, many months. I've had one that took 11 months to get. It's very inconsistent, but the vast majority of people will get in the next 2 or 3 weeks. If it goes longer, call USCIS, follow up. Eventually, if it never comes, you may have to apply for a new one saying it was lost and pay a fee, unfortunately. That does happen. Now, on the form DS-260, back when you're filling the application, uploading documents, there was a question there that asked if you wanted a social security number. It's very important you say yes and follow those particular prompts that are there so you can get it. And because once you enter, you should have a social security number mailed to you as well. Because of COVID-19, while I'm recording this right now, the Social Security office is understaffed, so it's taking a while to get this. Plus, the administration is putting pressure. I'm hearing some wild stuff where the Social Security office is asking, show us your need to get this Social Security number. I never heard of such thing. A couple of colleagues told me that. But there's always some hassles that pop up that you got to be mindful and be careful of. But for the most part, you enter, if you paid the fee and you told them you want a Social Security number, you'll send you a green card and they'll send you a Social Security number, and you get your life started, immediately start working. Now, if it takes a while to get the green card, that immigrant visa stamp that's in your passport, once the custom officer stamps it, it acts as a green card in most cases. I have to see your individual visa, but in most cases, it will act as a green card substitute until you get your green card. So you can use that to travel, come back and forth until you get your green card in the mail. So it's really important that you could know that you use that, so you don't, wait for that green card and not leave because of it. It does give you that flexibility. Now that you have your green card, I'm going to do a separate video of how to maintain the green card, things you need to be mindful of. So definitely catch that when it comes up. But that was a recap of the consular processing system I wanted you to prepare for. There's probably additional things we could talk about, but this is the general kind of stuff that we see in these kind of cases where we prepare clients for them with the preparation of the documents initially, uploading them, getting those approved, eventually preparing to go to the embassy interview, make sure that's done the best that it could, and then when they come to the U.S., be prepared as possible for that process that happens throughout here. Now, one thing that's very important that I re-mentioned is that you want to be honest, truthful, and include the information you need. You don't want to have inconsistencies and for them to say, hey, in the past visa application, in the past history, you did one thing, now you're telling us something different here. We don't want those issues to come back and say you lied. So I just recommend consulting with an immigration attorney. Try to find your old visa application forms, if you have those, the form DS-160, so you can compare to see what you said in the past as opposed to now, to prevent inconsistencies from happening. You can do Freedom of Information Act requests for your request for those visa applications to see what was said in there, so it's not problematic. Sometimes there may be issues that the embassy finds misrepresentation or fraud. You want to prepare for those so those won't pop up and hit you. Though these are general things as an attorney I look for in this process. So thank you so much for listening. I hope this information was helpful. Again, I'm John Khosravi. I'm an immigration attorney and an immigration professor. I try to really help people out with this. If you wanted to schedule a consultation in my office, just send me an email. info@jqqlaw is my email address, and hopefully we can schedule a video consultation to talk about it and take things to the next level. I hope you have a great success in your process, and I hope to see you all in America.